Hello everyone. Today we're going to get familiar with CSI and we'll go to the lessons in our workbook, lessons 1 through 6. We'll start with the introduction, we'll work through the quote to cash exercises, procure to pay exercises, demand to bill job order exercises, and financial plan to report exercises. We have already discussed in week 4 the business concepts from lesson 6. CSI will give you a standard user interface. It's a graphical user interface which allows you to navigate menus. There's a main toolbar. It's a very familiar Windows-based user interface. There will be some fields in CSI. If the field has a red star next to it, it is a required field, which means you cannot complete the transaction unless you provide that information. If it's a system-generated field, it will have a gray star next to it. If it has a gray background, then that means it's read-only. It cannot be changed through the system. There is also a checkbox which gives you the ability to toggle yes or no to turn on or turn off a feature or parameter or a function. Then there's radio buttons which give you the option to select from several options, one or the other usually, but not both. Then there's also a drop-down menu, and you will use the drop-down menu by simply clicking on the little arrow, the down arrow to the right of the field, and that will bring up a drop-down menu. These are all typical controls that are provided in most Windows-based applications. You've seen them before, I'm sure. The forms. There are hundreds of forms in CSI, and we'll get familiar with many of them. The form gives you the ability to graphically create and or change records that are stored in a database. Very important to understand that everything you do in CSI, all transactions from all forms, are written to a database. You can add information, modify information, or view information. Remember, I told you earlier, you can select, which means you can view. You can insert, which means you can add, and you can update, which means you can change. The one thing that's missing from here is delete, because you have to have certain permissions to be able to delete information from a database. But you can certainly select, insert, and update. The forms contain multiple fields, and the results of a form, or the records that are generated by forms, will ultimately be available in a report format where all of the similar data is collected and filtered based on a predefined format. Our course scenario. We're working for a company called Progressive Cycles. And Progressive Cycles is a bicycle manufacturer. We are using the ERP database. We're using CSI to provide and update information in our ERP database. We will, in addition to manufacturing bicycles, Progressive Cycles has now decided that they're going to go into the fitness tracker business, and then they will provide spare batteries to sell to wholesale customers. So not only will they provide bicycles, but now they will provide fitness trackers and batteries. We can, in our demand to build business processes, we will assemble products into a final combined product and sell it as a unit. You'll see that when we get to lesson 4, I believe. The concepts of manufacturing, accounting, and financial reporting are provided and supported in these scenarios that we will be using. The lessons that we will walk through will cover manufacturing, accounting, and financial reporting. All of these different types of activities and industries are supported by CSI. And remember, I mentioned that there were industry-specific transactions that are built into the system. We will take some of those industry-specific transactions, specifically the manufacturing transactions, and we will complete those transactions. All right, let's talk about CSI. After you get through with this lesson, you should be able to understand the features of CSI and understand basic transaction flow. This is an online transaction processing system, OLTP, and it has an OLTP back-end database. In this case, the back-end database is Microsoft SQL Server. We will cover first in our lesson 2, we'll cover quote to cash. Lesson 3, procure to pay. Lesson 4, create job orders. Lesson 5 is financial plan to report. And the demand to bill job orders, there is some discussion, but we will not, we will do the create job orders in lesson 4. And then the review of a business concepts is in lesson 6. Our first lesson, lesson 2, is quote to cash. There are 5 activities that you can complete in quote to cash. We're covering 2 of those activities. We will cover sales order to shipping and shipping to invoice. Those 2 business processes from quote to cash are the 2 business processes that we will cover in lesson 2. In procure to pay, there are 4 activities. We will complete 2 of them. We'll generate PO to receipt, or we'll take the PO that's already existing, purchase order to receipt, and invoice to payment. In demand to build, we will create job orders, and we will process those job orders. Financial plan to report. The general ledger. It is important to understand that the general ledger, all transactions are written to the general ledger, and then they can be determined whether it goes to the accounts payable journal or the accounts receivable journal. Then there's also financial reporting and closing, which is part of what everyday businesses do, especially at the end of the year and at the end of the fiscal year. If you would like to read some documentation about any of the forms or transactions that we conduct in this class, you can go to inforextreme.com, and there you can get some additional supplemental materials, documentation that might be useful to you. All right, so which of the following will we cover in this class? We will definitely cover quote to cash. We'll do that in just a few minutes. Procure to pay, that's exercise 3. Design to build, or job orders. Exercise lesson 4. Financial plan to report. Lesson 5. Which of these will you use if you forget your ID? I think the question is wrong here. But anyway, which of these should you do if you forget your user ID? Should you use a friend's user ID? You should never use a friend's user ID, because these are transactions that are written to a database, and once it's there forever. You should not make up a user ID. More than likely, it won't be in the database anyway, and you won't be able to conduct your transactions. Should you go home for the day? As much as you might like to, probably you should not go home for the day. Rather, you should ask the instructor for your ID. I'm going to provide a list of the IDs and post it in Blackboard so everybody will have a user ID and a logon that's been already provided for you, and that information will be available in Blackboard. All right, so that's lesson 1. Let us proceed now to lesson 2. In lesson 2, we are going to do some quote to cash transactions, including shipping to invoice, which I talked about earlier. So let's jump into it. The purposes of a quote to cash is to track an opportunity. An opportunity means a potential sale. You might have a customer who wants an estimate before they decide to make a purchase. An estimate, quote, are basically the same thing. So we have the ability in CSI to track opportunities. We can record our shipments, and we can invoice and collect payments. We will, in this lesson, we will definitely record order shipments, and we will do invoice and collect payments. There are 2 transactions that will be covered in lesson 2. They are sales order to shipping, which we'll do in just a minute, and shipping to invoice, which is exercise 2.2. Sales order to shipping, exercise 2.1. Shipping to invoice, exercise 2.2. So let's go ahead and log on to CSI and walk through exercise 2.1. You should have received your user ID, your password, and all of the stuff that you need, or you created your own password. All of the stuff that you need should have been provided to you, and you should have now access to CSI. So we're going to go ahead and log on. This is the web address that I provided in the Getting Started presentation and video. You want your CUNY email address and the password that you created, and you click Sign In. While we're waiting for the sign-in screen to load, I might want to point out that the issue with our licensing has been resolved, and we should be good to complete all exercises. Click on the square in the upper left-hand corner, and then click Infor Cloud Suite. These steps should become very familiar to you after a while. Make sure that you have chosen from the drop-down the DALS environment. Make sure, because otherwise the transactions will not work. Pick your environment and then click OK. While I'm waiting for that to load, let me go back to exercise 2.1. We're going to open the customer order form, and then we're going to filter. Filter is probably one of the most important things you can do. You cannot create any new customer orders unless you filter. So let me see if we have been loaded yet so I can walk you through that process. I like to close the Explorer so that I have more room, more window screen on the form. You can toggle between them. You can get to the menu from the Master Explorer, or you can get to it from the user interface, either one. I prefer to close the Explorer and simply use the menus, which to me seems a little bit more user-friendly. So you go to the form menu, you click Open. I've already done the customer orders form, but again, you'll simply type in customer orders. Many of you have already done this when we were trying to validate that our customer licensing was working. So now it should work. Click customer orders and click OK. All right, so this brings up a blank customer order form. Notice that on the menu, the only icon that is enabled is the filter. This is the filter. The filter basically means I want to select all customer orders. Select customer orders. So when we click the filter, we're doing a select statement. Select customer orders, and it will filter in place. It will load the customer orders. This one I've already completed, but I'm going to walk through the steps again so that you can create one too. So once you have filtered, you will see a list of customer orders that are already stored in the CSI database. We're going to add another one to the database, to add a new record to the database, and I'm following the instructions in step 1 on exercise 2.1 if you want to follow along in your workbook. Click the little blue plus sign. That will create a new customer order. Okay, so that is step 1. And then we're going to go to the customer field, and we're going to use, when you use the drop down, it will show customers up to a certain number. Now our customer numbers are in excess of 300, so we're going to do a wildcard search so that it brings up the next group of the next group of customers. So we're going to type in C underscore 3 and an asterisk, which is a wildcard, and then click the drop down arrow again. Now it loads all of the additional customer orders starting at 300. I believe these are the ones that have been assigned to us, so I'm going to use 321. You guys will use 300 through 320, and I will use actually I think I'll start a new one with 322. You're going to use 300 through 321, the one that's been assigned to you. If you have any questions about your what has been assigned to you, please let me know. All right, so that is step 2 of exercise 2.1. Step 3 says adjust the order date. Notice that it's got a red star by it, which means it's a mandatory field, but it's automatically, the default is today's date, which in this case is what we want. So today's date is what we need. It should also be a regular order. Notice that there are some other regular order or blanket order. This is a regular order. The warehouse is main. Everything else, all of the defaults should be there. And the ship to should be a value of 0. All right, so then we simply save this order. When you save the order, the system is going to generate an order number for you. When you click save, you'll see it in just a second, there will be an order number generated by the system to associate with this customer. We'll take a little time. And our system generated order number in this case is DC0000390. Make a note of your customer order because you will use it later on. Okay. Now we've got to add some line items. So we're now on exercise 2.1, step number 5. We can scroll over and there is a little ellipsis, 3 dots up here in the menu, close to the menu anyway. The 3 dots is an ellipsis. And the ellipsis, if you click it, usually it stands for more. It brings up another menu. That menu then we will use, from that menu, we'll use the line, customer order lines. So when we click lines, this will actually allow us to put some items in our customer order. Right now, all we have is a shell of the customer order, but we don't have any line items. Notice that it'll bring the order number from the customer order screen, It'll bring the name of the customer, wholesale customer, and then we can select our item. If you look at the drop-down list, there are some items that have already been added to the database, lots of different types of items, all of them associated with doing bicycle manufacturing. And if you notice, most of them are put in inventory. Our item does not show up in the list. So again, we're going to do the wildcard. We type item, the word item, underscore. And our item will start with 3. So we type a 3 and the wildcard, the asterisk. Click the drop down. And there will be our items. These items have been provided specifically for us and are part of our test database. I'm going to find item 322. You will find your own item, and we want item A. Once you select the item, it's going to fill in the description. It gives you the unit price. It gives you the due date, a default due date of 28 days, I believe, from today. We're going to change the quantity to 10. And we're going to change the due date. The instructions tell us that we need a due date that is 1 week from today. And so our due date will be October 5th, which is 1 week from today. Notice that it automatically updates our net price. Our unit price is $24 per unit. 10 units that we were ordering, 10 times 24 is $240. And there you go. Notice also that the status is changed to ordered. Right, so now at step 7, we're going to save and close the customer order lines. So we save. Once it has been saved, then we will close it. Okay, so now notice that we've got a customer order form and we have a customer order lines form. We can close the customer order lines form, and that takes us back to our customer order. So now we're going to create a second customer order with a due date 1 month from today. So again, we go back to lines. Notice that it already has line 1, our first item. We also want line 2, so we're going to click New, and that will change our line item and increase it by 1 to line item 2. And again, we need the same item, and so we'll use the wildcard search. That's a basic database function, is to search database. In this case, and in most cases, a database includes thousands of records, and so wildcard takes you pretty close in the database to the items that you will need. Okay, so now we want the same item again. This time the due date is 1 month from today, so that will be October the 28th. And so we save this. All right, then we can close the customer order line form again. And now we can verify. There's something called an order verification report. And this is going to be steps 8 and 9. It gives you the ability to verify what you have just ordered. Click the order verification report icon. And it will show you some of the parameters that have already been set up. It's an item. Notice that we have, it's grayed out. We don't have the ability. The due date is there, or today's date is here. It will display the due date in our form. It starts with our order number, which is, in my case, was 390, the starting order number and the ending order number. Now, if you were looking for a range of orders, you could change this and start with order 389 and go through order 390 or whatever. In this case, we only want to look at the order that we've just created. All right, the other thing is use profile simply means that we're going to send by email a copy of this customer order to the customer in the real world. That's what would happen with this use profile checkbox. All right, so then we click preview. And it's going to build our report for us. Takes a little while, a few seconds or so, to build the report, and it gives you a message saying wait for the report to complete. And it will generate the report based on the transactions that we have just created. So we have now an order verification report, the date, and the parameters that we've set up, the starting and ending numbers. Here's the most important part of the report, is the customer number, the items that were ordered, item 321 and 322, and yours number should be 480 instead of 270. I should have changed the quantity, but I didn't. So anyway, it should be a quantity of 10, and it should be $480 for both of your items in your report. Then what I want you to do is go to the corner and click the download button. Click that download button, and you're going to save this as order verification is simple report, order verification simple, and you're going to call it, put your last name. In this case, my last name, I already have one, and it will save it as a PDF. You will then take that PDF and you will upload this verification report to Blackboard as your exercise 2.1. So you will take this PDF file and upload it to Blackboard. And let me walk you through that real quick. You simply log on to Blackboard. Under weekly materials, and week 5 there is an exercise 2.1, which I will now make available since we are back in business. Let me make it available real quick. It is worth 20 points, so if you submit the form, then life is good. Let's see the due date. Make it available. I'm not going to limit the availability because I know we've had some difficulty getting this environment configured properly, so I will give you time, adequate time to complete exercise 2.1. So you'll click here and you will click the submit button. You will see the due date is October 1st, but I'm going to extend that due date because I want to give you enough time to upload it. 20 points. When you click the submit button, since I'm the instructor, it doesn't allow me to, but when you click submit, it will allow you to browse and find the file that you, actually you can do it here, browse your computer, go and find that file that you just created. I have lots of stuff in my computer, don't I? Okay, so then I put mine in a folder. So I will take that file, click open. That will allow the file to be uploaded. And I click submit. Now yours will actually submit. Mine is just preview because I'm in instructor mode, but that is what you will do. You click upload the file, click submit, and then it will be in the grade book for me to grade.